Something I like to share when talking to people and working with people. I've clicked on my own simulation before.
Welcome to the first episode of When Nobody's Watching. Hopefully people are watching. Fingers crossed. So Holly, do you want to tell me a little bit about kind of your background, what you do now, and then we'll kind of get into the conversation.
Fantastic. So many years ago, my roots actually started as a designer. Then I moved into local government, which was interesting, but supporting a lot of different functions. So got exposure to not only more of that design and learning side of it, but like community outreach and governance and equality and diversity.
Yeah.
Then moved through a couple of different organisations to work for financial services, which was an interesting change.
Nice.
Got to nerd out doing learning and development for a long time, worked in business intelligence, doing learning for them and educational materials. And then I worked in a central learning team where we would do the work for the rest of the business functions. And I come across cyber.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was one of the most interesting topics to work with, to transform as well. So quite often we were receiving very just wordy, policy heavy things. So we got to, really explore different things. And then I just started pestering the security team in where I worked, become a security champion to get loads of experience. And then an opportunity come up in their education and training team. So I took that. Moved over then to another company who had suffered a ransomware attack and were looking to build a central team. So that was the next step up. That company was 145,000 people.
Wow.
Which was very different in regards to, you can do the work, but then the getting out to the people.
Disseminating that much information.
Very different, but very interesting, really good. And then now I've moved to Tunstall Healthcare. So again, unfortunately, they've suffered a public ransomware attack in the past, but they really value, they're building a group cybersecurity team. They brought in myself as one of the first people. So yeah, just having a great time with them now and nerding out with the Cognitive Security Institute on the side. So
Well, that's cool.
Yeah, I just get to follow my passions everywhere, which I feel very lucky for, to be honest.
That's cool. That's what we like to hear.
Yeah.
So when you first started working in security awareness, what was the hope for that kind of first campaign that you ran, and did it go to plan?
No. No, and it was interesting because I actually joined a really mature team at the time. So they'd been going for many years before, had really, they were quite a big team. Because, a lot of us are either on our own or, a couple of us.
Even in really big companies, we talk to so many people where it's like one person in the security team. Usually someone young.
Yes, definitely. And I was really lucky to be surrounded by different expertise, a lot of ex-military people as well. So I, that wasn't my path, but I like a lot of what I learned from in the workspace, etc., around like discipline and everything. So I think because my experience in business intelligence, they'd actually brought me in to look at the metrics piece. So how do we measure more effectively what we're doing? So that was my starting point. But then doing those campaigns, I think, anything, we always design things in our head for perfect conditions.
Yes.
And then we put them out in the real world and quite naturally it lands very differently.
Yeah.
But that was where I really learned, okay, I could spend the next 10,000 years figuring out everything I could possibly figure out, and I could give it to someone else and give it to you, and you just go, oh, you've done something I never considered. And I was like, okay, this is where maybe, so I was very lucky to have access to a very mature champions network as well. So started just working with people in the production stages of the campaigns, etc., getting them to review it, test it, also not just getting people that like what you do and like security, but those other voices that have shared feedback that aren't interested, think it's a load of rubbish, and they were like a
majority of people.
But I've set myself, I don't know what it does to me, but I'm like, I've got a new challenge now, and actually if they're open to, I'll work with that person. I thought if I can bring them on that journey, I can kind of bring anyone else really. So it's been very interesting, and that's why I love it though, because people are fascinating. I'll never get bored of it. I'll never get bored of the role. It's helping people in different ways. So but no, I think you always design for perfect conditions, and then the real world just does what the real world does.
I mean, when we're designing like escape room scenarios or new stuff, I'll test it obviously myself, but I know all the answers, so that's not helpful. It's really interesting to see like the weird and wonderful ways in which people will break every single thing that we've built. in just ways that I've never ever considered before. But I think that's again why I like working with people, because you get to see such a variation in like how people think.
Yeah, I love it. And it's knowing that you don't know everything and those different skills that people bring. I was very lucky to be exposed to some really amazing leadership that showed me just the diversity of thinking and everything, and giving people opportunities. Brought together an amazing team where you all contributed your different strengths,
Yeah.
and you could really manage the work between you. And I think, yeah, that's always what I'm doing now, is just sharing ideas with people, talking. Like, I feel like a lot of people are guinea pigs, and I might be stood at the side of a room while they're doing a physical activity, and I'm like, right, they done this, and I didn't plan for that. Okay, let's go back to this.
Yeah.
But it really does help them with the delivery, because a lot of the stuff that I see is designed with good intentions, but then it lands. It's not realistic. People can't, do it the way you expect them to maybe do it.
Yeah.
Or as well, time wise, you can. I've seen people, and I've done it myself, where you spend loads of time creating something that actually is not going to fit in their day to day either. I think that's another big challenge that is kind of always increasing.
Yeah, I think it is interesting because I think the security team want everything they're doing to be like first and foremost people. But you have to remember that security is not people's day jobs.
Yeah,
their day job is their day job.
definitely. And I wish everyone would wake up tomorrow and loved it as much as I do, and were as passionate as I am. But that's not going to happen, and I get that. Everyone's making trade-offs, and I'm really mindful. I can't tell people, be careful of cognitive load and be considerate of this, without doing it myself in my own practices. It's very easy to get tunnel vision, and suddenly I've written War and Peace, and I'm like, okay, right, I need to like refine this, and do that. But again, I think just working with people, and testing those ideas out and stuff has just been so good. Yeah.
So you've worked on like a number, or presumably you've worked on lots of different campaigns. Has any of those campaigns ever been entirely slide based?
Yeah, maybe, yeah, I would say so. So there's been some that have been more, we just have to. They call it JFDI, just fucking do it.
Yeah.
And I think that's always a case of, doing what is right for the business and doing the needs, but you do get the odd one that comes across the desk that has had to be in the way, but still challenge myself. Okay, if I have to use PowerPoint, if I have to use slides, how can I make it engaging? How can I bring the audience in so I'm not talking at you for the next 30 minutes? So I'm not having you squint on a page and going, can you just point that out? Or putting people under unnecessary pressure. I think something we all remember is
I like putting people under pressure.
Good pressure. I say friendly pressure. Maybe some people wouldn't say that, but yeah, no, good pressure, rather than kind of, okay, I can't access this, I can't do this. The amount of times I think you're also like a gatekeeper. I'm not just. It's very dangerous to, yes, I'll just do it how you're telling me to. Yes, I'll just do it, because you would end up just uploading policies, for example, just in Word format, all 20 pages. Oh, can everyone pretend that they've just read this for the last 10 minutes and attest to it? So again, it's been navigating how you then consult and work with people and bring them on.
We've had to recently write a load of policies for some tenders that we're doing, and I'm like, my team are not fucking reading all these policies. I don't want to read it, and I've written the fucking thing. So that team are never going to bother reading it. So I've had to like distill it down into like, here are 5 things that you need to know from every single policy that we've got. These are the 5 things that you guys need to do.
Yeah, and I think you just said something there that I really relate to as well, is that all of this come from me looking at things like, this is too much for me, this was overloading me, I'm not interested, I don't get it. Things like that, and then redesigning things myself so I could understand, which then brought me into that design space, etc. Because I think using your own personal experiences is really good. I like to look around me, even like when I was coming on the train down today, I'm like, a lot of other industries have good ways of developing, information and things like that, maybe in the more traditional formats. But yeah, no, where we can always like make it interactive, bring them involved, gamify it. I think it's a really good one.
Do you think there's over gamification?
Yes, and it can be very dangerous potentially. I think it can be done really well, and it can be really, you can make something that is so dry engaging, and
I always think, why does cyber have to be dry?
it's
should
the
be
most
fucking really
interesting
interesting.
topic. Well, as soon people like watching the scam shows, people like sharing those news stories and things like that, and it doesn't always have to be high production. So the wins I've found as well is just sharing real reports inside a business. Or guess what nearly happened to this person over here, and guess what happened there. I know a lot of people are sensitive about the more severe things that do go on in an organisation, but I think there's so many stories that we can tell from the near misses. I just get a WhatsApp screenshot up on the screen, and it's got an impersonated senior leader that they recognise, and suddenly everyone's sat forward on the call. So whilst I am using a PowerPoint presentation, actually it's very different.
You made it relevant to them as well.
Yeah, made it relevant. Might do a little game where they're like, is it real or is it fake? But then trying to really get under that tone of, this isn't because any of us are careless. That we are really busy. This is how. So I like to go into the system 1 and system 2 thinking, and then just talk about first impression and just use that. Yeah. So if I have to use the of deck as a foundation, but yeah, I really like to complement everything I do broader than a deck. So, you've obviously got the formal learning stuff, and then we know that social norms and what's accepted is great, because I could tell someone going to do something, but if your boss is going to then write you down on your performance for taking too long, for not doing
so the way that we've quantified it, or the way that I've kind of thought about it, is that we have to have engagement has to come first, because it needs people's attention. Then you have awareness, which is kind of like the knowledge. So then you can, once they're paying attention, then you can tell them some stuff. But if the moment you walk out the room, like you've just said there, the moment you walk out the room, you get bullets for actually following any of those processes, then the culture of the organisation can either 10x what you're doing or completely tank what you're doing. So we write it down as a formula, and we've got E plus A, engagement plus awareness, multiplied by culture. Because if your culture's shit, then E&A could be fucking
destroys everything.
Could be amazing, but you could. But
it's gone.
If you get so if you're getting told off for, I don't know, challenging someone, then there's
that's
no
the
fucking
biggest
point
thing.
anything.
Yeah, and I do get it. There's a lot of like service level agreements, things like that we've got to meet, particularly when you're in intense industries like healthcare and stuff, or even just dealing with people in general. But I think that's where working with the leadership is really vital. Working with the stakeholders before. It's not always straightforward. I'm not just saying everyone that you go and have a conversation with is just going to go, oh, you've come and spoke to me now, that's fine. Really trying to understand what's going on in their environment, and your idea isn't always the one that's going to work in it. And it's then working with them to adapt that. They then feel a bit more bought in because they feel heard too. And I think that's something that when I started putting myself out in these business areas to just, can I spend a day, when I was in a call center environment, can I come and listen to some calls and see what your challenges are and what your day-to-day is? They felt heard rather than just, oh, it's cybersecurity again, just trying, another thing I've got to do. But yeah, back to the gamification again. I think that's something that also helps with these areas, because you're not coming in from, right, I'm going to just make all of your staff sit down, read this 20-page policy again. If we can get an interactive activity, I do think we need to use it right, because I don't, I know that some models rely on, for example, reporting. And you don't want people to report everything to a degree just so they can get some points.
Exactly.
So it is some careful calibration, but you definitely can do it. And I think it, like you say, it helps with that engagement. But I've been in areas before where, the leadership piece hasn't been done. People go to travel to a site for something to land. You're doing all the things all day. You come away and all of you are back to what you're tasked to do. And then everyone's back to the drawing board. So that I have seen a lot of teams and people spend so much time producing beautiful things. And then also what that does to the team after as well. Just because there's been a mismatch between the production and the delivery side of it.
I think it's interesting what you said there about you go deliver something amazing, but then it goes back to, everyone just goes back to normal. And I always think that is what happens in every organisation every October. Is October comes around. I mean, Dan, you're producing a podcast. Do you know what October means in terms of cybersecurity? Yeah. But I'm fucking surprised, right? Because most people outside of the cyber industry have got no idea that October is Cyber Awareness Month. To them, it's just fucking Halloween.
Yeah, exactly. Halloween or another, relevant season to them or something.
But so we, as an industry, we put all this pressure on October, and then we have this spike of engagement in October, and then it's just but it's normal. You don't have to think about it anymore. And I just think it's crazy that that we put the pressure on ourselves to do something in October. I mean, the amount of people that ring me in like July, August going, fuck, I've not organised anything for October. Help me. And I'm like, other months of the year exist.
Yes. Yes, definitely. Yeah, we don't just suddenly, cyber awareness people get awakened.
Yeah.
A couple of months. Oh, God, that'd be weird, actually. But I know because
quite a nice job actually. 10 months off.
Yeah, I didn't mind that bit of a hibernation in between. But yeah, no, because there is a lot of buzz around it, and I think for some organisations it's like an accessible starting point, maybe. But it really is. You've got to build it around. We know people don't learn just on a one and done basis. That you need the repetition.
Yeah.
We know that cramming everything in 1 month, you're not going to get that all done unless you've got the freedom to put everyone away in that. But like you say, even if you had them for the month, that's gone by the next time.
Yeah.
Next October comes round. So I do like to still try and make a buzz in an awareness sense that, we've got the month there, and we maybe do some special activities around it. But really it's consistent throughout the year. They've always got that presence.
Yeah, I think that's important, like learning through almost osmosis, I guess, where if you're surrounded by that messaging all the time, then it's much easier to kind of take in, because you don't learn, or I don't anyway, I don't learn in one big go.
Yeah, no, me neither.
I need like little bits of information over time, and then I can kind of work out how all that fits together. But I think a lot of what we do with security is, here's your annual course, go learn everything you need to know now. Okay, so we are going to now play Fix It in 60 seconds.
Okay.
So this is where I'm going to give you a piece of security awareness content, and then you're going to look at that and say what you would do with it.
Yeah.
So for the first one ever, we have got a standard cyber awareness module.
Oh.
So here we go. I'm going to hand it over, and then you can take a quick look at it and tell us what you would fix about that.
Right, you tell me when you would start.
You can go now, yeah.
Well, everything. If this is a long module, this is going to be far too long. It is as dry as anything. It feels like it's one of these awful policy documents we started on, so I'd make it much more interactive, engaging. Probably keep it to about 15 minutes. Try and plug on something interactive at the end, even like a virtual escape room.
Yeah.
Just to help people test out the ideas. None of this boring multiple choice where they can just click it as many times. So maybe some smart ways of testing them, but not just making something interactive. You've also got the social element, so maybe some webinars or something for different learning. Making sure that you've got champions that are promoting it locally as well. I think that's really good. And then some other activities to make it engaging. Maybe do like a competition or something like that, like a challenge. I think, one page in the moment resources, like we discussed earlier.
Yeah.
So not just one thing, a system of things to adapt to people in different environments can pick it, but without losing, if they pick this one, they've lost, everyone still serves the purpose if you was only to pick one. But yeah, this is ugly as hell. Sorry.
That's all right.
But not sorry.
I think fix it in 60 seconds. You're just binning it in 60 seconds.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much.
There's so much good research out there to tell you what is working now and what works better. I can't do the one and done and all of that. You've got also the learning style now is learn in the moment. People just looking for this information as and when they need it.
Yeah.
And quite often, traditionally, policy document isn't accessible. Who's going to go and scan a 20-page document for something? No one. These LMS learning modules, they're not going to log into the LMS system, go through the platform, if they can, because actually you've already maybe closed that off, for example.
Yeah, if you've completed the training for this year, then you can't go back.
Yeah, so I'm trying to think of just ways of what resources can I give to people. Some of the traditional stuff still works for some operating environments, particularly when you've got like contact centres and things like that. They're really quite focused on what's around them as they're like just whizzing through their tasks, and you might get other areas that suit something else. What I'd like to try and do, and I'm trying to do it at the minute, is something that people can just query, like an agent or something. They've got a question in the moment, rather than searching for my intranet or searching through this, they can just go, what's this?
Yeah.
And it tells them, maybe gives them some extra stuff to point towards, but it's that in the moment.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Yeah, I think having that kind of on-demand thing, because if you're doing it at the time that you need it, then you can associate kind of the learning outcome with the thing that you're doing.
You start
but
to
I think,
remember it a bit more.
yeah, and then I think a lot of security learning and just business training in general tends to be quite abstract from the moment. I mean, we talk to people about phishing emails and stuff, but it's like if I'm not sat looking at my inbox and actually thinking about like emails, then I'm never gonna I can't associate those two things together.
No, it's the trade-offs, the brain. It always reminds me of it like cooking. You know, I'm not someone that's going to go and read a recipe and then a week later recreate it somewhere perfectly without looking at it. Like I'm looking at the recipe as I'm doing it, and I'm like, oh my God, what's oregano? Okay, let me Google that or something. You know, so that's what I'm just trying to think of, because that helps with the accessibility layer to it. It's not always easy because, you know, and I think there's a lot of noise in the industry. I'm glad there is, because more people are talking about it. But, you know, there's a lot of wanting to progress beyond compliance.
Yes.
I think compliance is a good starting point for people that have nothing, you know, which kind of relates to some of the SaaS maturity stuff where, you know, if you have got nothing or you've just sent the odd reactionary, we do need to get you to a compliant level. But then how we do that, is then down to people like us to really kind of chew over it, even down to classic things like attestations. You know, do you really need someone to check these boxes when we've got the data captured behind the scenes that they've completed it, you know, and maybe structured it in a way that they can't just click through? Or something that I'm mindful of is survey design and quizzing design, knowledge checks. That is so a craft and an art to do it, because we've all seen it. I mean, I do it, you know, click, click, click. I'm someone that gets chased to complete mandatory learning, and I'm in learning, but that's because my brain turns off or I don't have the time to do it.
I think as soon as you say the word mandatory, everyone's like, oh.
Yes, exactly. And I think there's so many ways you can make things more enjoyable, more relevant. People don't tend to, like, especially with the world that we're in, you know, they don't just put their hat off at work, act completely differently to their acting at home. You know, if they actually learn some of these skills.
That's literally, I think I wrote a blog about this not long ago, and I was like, the reason why we say fuck at work, and it's not because we like swearing. I do really like swearing, let's be real. But it's not just because of that, and it's not for like the shock value. It's because I'm talking to other adults who also use that kind of language. Like they go home and they'll watch Frankie Boyle or I don't know, Jason Statham films or like whatever. So when we come into the office, like why do we all put this like corporate facade on where we all speak in a totally different when we're doing like training and stuff, we all speak in this really abstract way. And I'm like, if we actually just spoke to each other like humans, a lot more of that information would actually get through to people because they'd be like, oh, right, you speak exactly like I do. Cool, right, and now I can listen to you.
It helps reduce that friction. I mean, like you say, someone says fuck or shit in the office and you're like, oh, gosh, all right, I can relax a bit more now. And I think there is that as well, because something I like to share when talking to people and working with people, I've clicked on my own simulation before. It was a really good simulation. I have a system that uses genetic reasoning and all of that to look at people's roles, etc. And it was about the mandatory learning. And, you know, and I'd just been chased by my manager recently and I knew I had to do it. And I went in and I thought I'd done it, but I'd had, you know, the system was a bit fragmented. And then I just got this email one day and I was in a rush and I was like, you've been fished. I was like, I've caught myself, but I share that.
Yeah.
Because actually no one is immune. And I think people like to hear that, because what we're not just trying to do is completely transform the materials or the activities that people are learning. It's their impression of us. You know, I've worked in an organization where I could work so well with the people that people then start bringing forward information.
Yes.
And that's one of the beautiful things. And, you know, in one place before the incident response team was fully coordinated, I already had messages. This is what's going on. This is what's happening. This is what I've seen. And I think that really kind of kicks that people are the weakest link out the door and over the edge. It's disgusting. You know, people are the strongest link. You know, we are a primary attack vector, but that's because, and that's why I like to share with people as well. Again, we're not doing this careless. No one really sits there and goes, haha, I'm going to click on this because I want to get in trouble.
Fuck you guys over
screw
today.
The company. I mean, I have observed some interesting reports where someone might receive an email in the company from someone they maybe don't want to do the work for, and they're like, I'm just going to report that as phishing. Gone. So I have seen a bit of malicious compliance, but generally people don't sit there and do these things.
I think 99% of people at work are not coming into work to fuck you over.
No, they're not. They're getting, they're rushed.
busy.
It's chemical hijacking. These things are very well crafted. It's, and that's why I really like to look at the broader system as well. So whilst I get asked, can you do this or can you do this training? What's really developed over the years is not just, everything isn't just a training need.
Yeah.
Either. And most 99.9% of the time I found is it's a result of what's going on in the system. And then it's working with whoever on the around the processes, the tooling. There's something we can do now. If we can't, what can we do to help at least improve that in the meantime while we sort the rest of things out?
Yeah, I think security has got a bit of a shit PR problem. Like they're seen as the Department of No, people don't want to bring them in, they slow projects down, whatever. But I think the security team have to work super hard to flip that on its head, and rather than like you've said, going out to the business, talking to people, finding out what are you actually trying to do, and then coming up with a solution, rather than just being like, no, this is secure now, thanks.
Yeah, this is the solution, and you better do it, and I'm going to chase you in 2 weeks, and then I'm going to start messaging your manager, and then I'm going to message your manager's manager, and I'm going to wonder why you're not happy with me anymore. And I think it's just so, I know it has science around it, but it's not really science, it's just peer-to-peer. How would you feel? How would you interact? And I think we can be really smart with what we do and how we do it. As I said, really looking at that broader system. It's not as quick and as fast as, I've just pumped out a training course again. I've just pumped, there are more changes, but actually that long-term impact, you're not spending time chasing people for training that isn't the problem. So yeah, that's where I've really started to be interested in the field kind of evolving as our roles are.
I think it's cool that you go out into the business and get hands on, because I mean, we speak when we're selling escape rooms, we talk to a lot of people and they're like, oh, we've got to do it in person, and I'm like, you have to go and speak to other humans.
We were just used to being sat behind a screen, and I think that's it. I mean, even if you have to do something digitally, I think the more you can make it memorable, social. I like people to have fun while they're not realizing that they've learned things. I think that's the best way. As I said, even just sharing some of these real examples. Okay, that might not be fun in the traditional sense, but
it's memorable.
They don't often see it, and then they go away from their session. They go to their peers. I just saw a deep fake that in person. I make a deep fake on a call. I rip the CEO's YouTube audio, stick it in ChatGPT, and I just show them, and they're like, wow, now I get it. And it's just something that just changes. It's a bit more energizing rather than, sat there 45 minutes or, like you say, or doing like a lone activity, head down in your computer. So I really like the escape rooms or just bringing people out of the environment where you can.
Yeah, I always think if we can get people away from a screen, we actually capture the retention. Because I know as soon as my phone's around, I'm fucking looking at it. If I'm sat on my computer, then my inbox is pinging all the time. So if you're doing a webinar or whatever, I'm still probably looking at my inbox in the background. Whereas if I'm in person and I haven't got a screen anywhere near me, then you've got
this is the most I've just been away from screens and everything. And I think, again, that's what we're really starting to understand as well, is those trade-offs people are making, starting to look deeper as organisations pass training and behind what's going on with people cognitively, and starting to understand that space a lot more. Because as I keep saying, people aren't careless. People don't go, I'm going to do this so I can go and get told off by a team tomorrow. People trying to survive and get through their days. I mean, all of us are in high pressure environments, let alone those who are in real, life and death environments or hostile environments, all kinds. It is really interesting to see the impact that has. As we spoke to at the start, that has an impact on how your stuff lands, but then also kind of the long-term piece where you're looking at, right, this isn't a one and done topic. How am I going to work with this area for the foreseeable? I don't know if you look ahead like 3 years or something like that. But I'm always learning and always trying to find out. I think I've just spent 1 year in Tunstall just figuring out how the business moves, what they respond well to, what channels does work well, what doesn't work well as well.
I think it's interesting in security that we seem to give everyone the same information year after year. But I was speaking to my friend yesterday, she's a teacher, and I said, it's mental why we do it. Because I said, I mean, she's his French teacher, and I said, I get that you go around the same topics every year. So in year 7, you might learn to, I don't know, about a verb or whatever. And you might go and learn a different version of that verb in year 8. but you progressed further. But in security, it's like we just do
just the same,
same
just tick
thing
a
all the
box.
time.
Yeah, no, and then we wonder why people like the amount of effort and hidden cost to the business that I don't really think people understand around chasing and all of that. You know, I've seen teams where like people's whole jobs all week is to chase.
Yeah.
And I'm like, actually, I understand that maybe we can't disrupt it and stop it. So what can we do? Almost running two channels. You know, we've got this that we maybe have to do right now, but what is our improvement going to look like?
Yeah.
What is that next one? I can't. I'd be bored doing it a second year the exact same myself from a production point of view. So that I think that's just something that has always been in me, that I can't just chuck this out. I can't just make them do the same.
Yeah.
Again, trying to challenge, and I think there's so much good information out there. There's a lot more people experimenting.
Yeah.
Which I think is really nice with more of these, you know, not just your boring, and even your annual training, you can really change that. You can really make that a lot better. If you have to do something every year, if you are in a heavily regulated environment, there are smart ways to do things and still capture the data that you need behind the scenes. But I think it's, you know, not every organization is lucky as well to have people like us that are looking at it. You know, some are still arguing if this is something that they should pay for in their budget and consider.
Yeah. No, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Because they're exactly the kind of people who will be pointing the finger at someone if they've actually clicked on a phishing link or given a password away or whatever, but provided them with absolutely nothing of any use.
When it goes wrong, you know, and we've all started to be more exposed to news stories and things like that. You know, I want everyone in my organisation to be able to show off to their peers and go, oh yeah, look what we're doing. We're doing it cool and we're having fun, and I'm still, you know, I'm still meeting my compliance, but I've also got measurable behaviour change. So that's something else. I love to pair fun and creativity with some hardcore shit and science, which I love, because I think there's a lot of wrong ideas that they're exclusive of each other. You know, oh, you have to have it all data, so we meet compliance and do the auditor, and that's, you know, we have to do that. Or, oh no, if you go too creative or anything, we're going to suddenly lose
all of the information.
Lose all the information that we need. And I know there are ways that you can do this.
So what kind of metrics do you look at in your organisation? Because I'm assuming it's not just phishing reports.
No. And what I'm doing in my organisation in a minute is taking them on a journey, because like a lot of us, the data capability isn't always perfect from the start. So we're building that up. So taking what we currently do. So at the very start, it was looking at things like click report. I mean, I was still looking at like segmentation and breaking it down, looking at broader things. So you're not just focusing on the risk of phishing. Obviously, our roles have got a lot bigger than that. I love data, and I am in a lot of information. You know, I get a lot of access to threat stuff, etc., and just poke my nose in any other data sets. But what I'm really looking at is, like you've touched on earlier, like you've got things like engagement metrics, etc., which get a lot of shit. But they're needed. You know, they're just a type of metric. I like to understand how my activities are performing. You know, are they reaching people? Is it doing, you know, what it says it would? So then looking at the measure of effect. So I've got what the risks are that I'm trying to address. Then what data I can get. So is that I always butcher these words. Quantitative data, because we know as well that people might do a piece of e-learning and they rate themselves or self-assess themselves something, but then looking at the logs and some of these things could be very different. You know, either overconfidence or underconfidence.
Yeah, we've got one of the new products that we're bringing out at the moment is like a behavioural measurement layer. But to start off with, you baseline yourself with surveys.
Yeah.
So we've got some questions that are like, you either know the answer or you don't know the answer. But then some of it's like, I would rate myself highly for being able to understand this. And I've purposefully weighted those questions lower, because I'm like, no one's going to sit there. I would never sit there and say, I'm shit at doing something. I'm like, I'm fucking
especially a security form. Like, they're like, oh my God, someone's going to read this. I'm going to end up being told off. Which I completely understand. I mean, I like trying to get data just from what you can on the outskirts.
Yeah.
I do like that. I think it's all complementary of each other. Before I do anything, I'm looking at what's there, what's the current state, what's that telling me right now.
Yeah.
That helps inform my activities. Then I measure it after. So did it perform? Was there an effect?
I think it can be difficult in like attribution though. If you've got a security culture and a security program that's working effectively, you've got multiple streams of work going on all the time. So much like with marketing, it's like, well, I don't know which piece of marketing's actually moved the needle. I just know that one of the 20 things I've done this month, people have responded to. And I think it's difficult to kind of give that specific attribution for specific activities. You've kind of got to throw everything at the problem, because people are learning such different ways.
Yeah, it's like I like this, like the experimentation phase of science, and that's what I see it as, particularly because I'm going into organizations that haven't done anything before. Right, how are they responding to all these different things? I'm trialing and testing different methods, different groups. You've got things like control groups, etc. To really get an understanding. Right, this is my toolkit for these scenarios and that. I was lucky when I worked in financial services, when I come in to do the metrics piece. I knew of a business intelligence platform that we was then able to feed all the different data points into, so we could start seeing, well, comms did go out on this day, and actually, we know the purpose of the comms was to, let's pick a basic, I don't know, encourage reporting, or I don't know, stop people sharing passwords unencrypted or something. You could then start to see those data points. Again, going into new places, everyone's quite often got dirty data, incomplete data that makes us all scream and go, what the fuck is, what's that? So most of my life is spent in spreadsheets, but then that's what I'm planning to then evolve. And what I'm doing now is, where can we get APIs connected in from the different systems I've used? Right, what and who do I need to speak to start getting production on a dashboard? So I can then start having those metrics, because I'm mindful that because this space is advancing into lots of fancy dashboards and technology, and we're all told to measure a million different things, that people are going to worry that actually starting from the foundations and getting them right, it's really valuable. Really good. So starting small, starting with what you have, and then that's why I've started planning now for where I am. I know that there's some things I can't measure as well as I'd like.
I think culture's a really difficult one to measure.
It's
so perceptive. It's like all about people's perception, and then what people say they're going to do, and what they actually do is completely different.
When you've asked them. There could be some things going on in areas of the business, redundancies, all kinds that then affect it. Someone could have just had a late night and a bad morning, it's really, and that's why I think broadening out, not just taking kind of those self-assessments and that, which is one piece of the pie, looking at these other data sets, looking at what that full comprehensive
that's what we're building into kind of some of the products that we've got now, where it just picks behaviour signals up for you. So there's not like an extra layer of measurement that you need to do. It's like, just do the activity and then we'll pull the data out of the activity for you. Like, you don't need, because I always think surveys, like you said, depends if you've had a good night's sleep or not. Like, if you're tired, you're going to be grumpy as fuck, and you're going to be like, that was shit, don't like it, didn't want to do that.
Or that you've just been told off for doing something, or you didn't complete your training. Oh, well, I've just been asked how I think about security, blah, blah, blah. And it just, and I think, again, people that craft kind of knowledge check, and when I've been doing it, it is an art. It really is an art to really ascertain what you've done, and has that landed, but then not just has that landed in the moment, how are you going to measure that over time? Because like we've said, I could come away and do something and measure some people next week. Oh, they've all slightly improved, but what about the week after? What about the month after and the year after?
It's still, is that message continuing to land?
Do you keep it fresh, or do you, are you still continuing, like back to the point with October, and not just doing something for only October? How are you building that system yourself around them? I'm all about systems, as you can tell. So I'm like, it feels like, was it Shrek with layers? And you've got all these layers, and I'm like forever and ever peeling back these layers. But then, that is the dream vision, when you get to a state where I've got a lot of data at the minute that I didn't have last year, for example. And I know that in 6 months, I'm planning to, the things that I'm working on should then enhance that even more. And then I should make that easier. So I think, people just need to really understand the value in like getting what you've got now and starting with those, like, build those strong foundations. Because I've joined such large organizations where the rush has been do more. And then we're all sat there going, the basics aren't right. And the basic data isn't there. Which is a headache.
Yes.
Let's say the least.
Holly, it's been amazing having you on the show. Thank you so much. Is there anything that you kind of want to get across to people as a final thought?
Please remember that we're all human. And do reach out, because we're doing a lot of good work in the cognitive space. So, watch this space.
Excellent.
Nice.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.